Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Philly Sports Power Hour. Hope everybody had a great weekend. It was a beautiful day yesterday. Warming up a little bit, almost golf season. But not a quiet Monday morning. A lot of news, a lot of things to talk about, maybe none bigger than Jason Kelce tweeting out, no keg video this year. I have come to a decision and will address it at a press conference this afternoon. 1 p.m. today, Jason Kelce will be holding a press conference down at the NovaCare complex. And I think we all can assume what this means for Jason Kelce. Keg stand means you're coming back. Press conference means you're calling it a career, and we'll talk about that. Also, reports over the weekend from Jeremy Fowler at ESPN that Fletcher Cox will most likely be retiring this offseason as well. What does that mean for the Philadelphia Eagles, losing two veterans on both sides of the football? Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox most likely. We'll talk about that. Another report from Jeremy Fowler is that a reunion could be in the works with safety Chauncey Gardner Johnson. More news. The Philadelphia Phillies and Zach Wheeler have agreed to an extension. And then we got to talk some Sixers and some Flyers as well. Both on a winning streak. Flyers 1 game, Sixers 2, but we'll take it. We'll take some positivity. And I see people in the chat, yes, rest in peace to Chris Mortensen, one of the best to ever do it. So a lot to talk about today on the Philly Sports Power Hour. We'll get into it. But let's get a little roll call. We're streaming live across the JAKIB Sports Network, as well as Bill Colarulo Philly Sports Talk. We're live here on TikTok, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. We're everywhere. So let's get a little roll call in the chat. I see Jim G checking in. Wine Niners Wine, my man. Bry Guy, Flexin' and Steppin'. Philly 007, Brian Lippincott, Xavier Spencer, Jason A-Team. Who else we got in the house? Twiz, Decoy Gaming. Got more people checking in on TikTok. Jim Joyce, what's up? And I see Jason A-Team. I was on your actual channel. No one's over there. Yeah, we got to get that channel built up. We got to get the Bill Colarulo Philly Sports Talk channel built up. And I see Kyle Kokorski checking in, James Jones checking in. So good to see everybody. Let's jump in because there is a ton to talk about. And Twiz is checking out. We'll check you later, my man. All right, let's jump into the biggest news probably of the morning. Jason Kelce announcing he's going to be holding a press conference today at 1 o'clock. And yeah, Jason A-Team, the chats work on both. So it's the same chat on both. I could see them all. But Jason Kelce reports, or tweets, I should say, that he's going to hold a press conference. He's gone. I mean, this is something I've been saying for a while. Once you started to hear Jason Kelce talking about the Philadelphia Eagles in third person, like he did Super Bowl week, where he was referring to the Eagles as they and them. To me, that was a telltale sign. He's gone. So I think he will retire today at 1 o'clock at the press conference, and it is a sad day. Now, if you follow me, you follow this show, you know I've been of the mindset that I wanted to see Jason Kelce retire because I personally didn't feel that the Philadelphia Eagles had the luxury of having the highest paid center in the NFL when you have all of these other needs. I felt that it was time to get younger and go with the draft pick you took a couple of years ago in Cam Jurgens. Move Cam Jurgens over to center. And then I'm going to rely on Jeff Stoutland. We all trust Jeff Stoutland. And if I'm Howie Roseman, Kellen Moore, Nick Sirianni, I'm going to Jeff Stoutland and I'm saying, is Tyler Steen ready to be the starting right guard on this football team? And if Jeff Stoutland doesn't think that Tyler Steen's ready, well, then you go out in free agency and you sign a right guard. And I see people on TikTok talking about Sua Opeta. Same thing. Opeta's a free agent, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Opeta's a free agent. So again, I'm asking Jeff Stoutland, is Sua Opeta ready? Should we re-sign him? Because he was kind of up and down last year. But for me, I'm asking him first and foremost about Tyler Steen. If Steen's the guy, you drafted him last year in the 3rd round. If you have faith that he's the guy, then you go into this season with your starting offensive line, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens at center, the reason you drafted him, Tyler Steen at right guard, Lane Johnson at right tackle. So, yes, I'm sad that Jason Kelce is no longer going to be a Philadelphia Eagle. And I see some people on TikTok saying, well, maybe he's going to announce he's coming back. Not Jason Kelce's style, in my opinion, to hold a press conference just to say he's coming back. That's not how he would do it. He's gone. He's retiring. And I am sad as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, as somebody who's followed the entire career of Jason Kelce from when he was a 6th-round draft pick in 2011, and we've watched him grow into one of, if not the best center the NFL has ever seen, an amazing leader on this team, a Super Bowl champion, gave the best speech at a championship parade in not only Philly sports history, but probably all of sports history. 6-time first-team All-Pro, Jason Kelce. So, yes, I am sad to see him go. But at the same time, I think this is the right time, not only for Jason, but also for this Philadelphia Eagles team. You cannot, and I see our resident troll, Shooter McGavin, in the chat making fun that I said in all of sports history. You tell me a better championship parade speech than what Kelce gave. Give me one. Tell me one where there was a better speech than Jason Kelce's. Get out of here. Anyway. So I think it's time, though, for them to get younger. I think it's time for them to take the money you would have had to have spent against the cap. He had over $10 million cap hit last year. You move to Cam Jurgens, his cap hit's about $1.8 million. So you take that over $8 million in cap space and you put it somewhere else, because there are a lot of needs on this football team, especially on the defensive side of the football. And I see people on TikTok asking about Chauncey Gardner Johnson. We'll get there. I want to talk about that. But there's another report from Jeremy Fowler from this weekend that another veteran on this Philadelphia Eagles football team may be calling it a career, and that's Fletcher Cox. So you have Jason Kelce, who was drafted in the 6th round of 2011, and now you have Fletcher Cox, who was drafted 12th overall, I believe, 1st round in 2012. And you look at the top 3 players in franchise history in terms of games played in a Philadelphia Eagles uniform. You have Brandon Graham at the top, and right behind him, you have Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox. So Fletcher Cox, also Super Bowl winner, obviously. a first-team All-Pro in 2018, a 6-time Pro Bowler. And you look at this past season, Fletcher Cox turned back the clock a little bit. He missed 2 games, but he played over 60% of the defensive snaps this year, even missing 2 games and barely playing in Week 18. He played really well this year. Fletch, I thought if Fletch wanted to come back and play in the NFL, I think there'd be a lot of people lined up for Fletcher Cox. But when I look at this Philadelphia Eagles team, that's the one position where we're okay. We've talked about it before on this show. The one thing that Howie Roseman has done above average over the last few years has been drafting defensive tackles. It's all the other positions on the defensive side of the football that he keeps missing. He keeps missing on safeties. Maybe Sidney Brown can finally correct that. They've missed on some linebackers. They've missed on some edge rushers. You have to go all the way back to Josh Sweat in 2018. The last time he drafted an edge rusher that's done anything. Maybe he got it right with Nolan Smith. We'll find out this year. Maybe Nakobe Dean can stay healthy and be the answer. But when you look at the history of Howie Roseman's draft picks, really outside of D tackle, he hasn't hit on anybody. But the D tackle position's okay right now. We all know we have Jalen Carter. There's another D tackle on that team that I really like, and that's Milton Williams. And I think you've seen Milton Williams get better every single season. And I expect him to make another leap next year. And then there's Jordan Davis, who I understand is kind of a polarizing figure. Some people think he's good. Some people think he's a bust. So we'll see what he can do in a Vic Fangio style defense. But you have Milton Williams, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. They also have Marlon Tupulotu, who when he's had opportunities has done some nice things. So I like him as a rotational player. And you saw some good things from 7th-round rookie last year, Moro Ojomo, at the D tackle position. So when I talk about the D tackles, Fletcher Cox retiring, yes, it's upsetting because he's another guy who's been around this team for 12 years. Somebody we saw grow from a rookie to being a leader, a Super Bowl champion, one of the best players in franchise history. But it is time to get younger. So I'm sad to see Kelce go. I'm sad to see Cox retire, if that is in fact what he does. But at the same time, I'm okay with this team getting younger. I'm okay giving Cam Jurgens the reason we drafted him. So I'm okay giving Cam Jurgens the keys and say, hey, you're the center now. And on the D tackle position, we're fine. So I know what a lot of people are thinking, though. Well, what about the veteran leadership? What are they going to do now, losing these veterans? And I don't want to take anything away from Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox as veteran leaders, because they have been veteran leaders for this team for a few years now. But what did that veteran leadership do for this Eagles team last year? Did it really matter that you had Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox as quote-unquote veteran leaders in that locker room? Did that save the season? Did you see what happened down the stretch? Did it really matter that they had veteran voices in the locker room? So I think sometimes we overrate the veteran leadership. And I think you look at this Philadelphia Eagles team, there's enough other guys that can step up and be leaders in that locker room. Because sometimes you need a change. Sometimes you need a different voice as leaders. Because I do think what maybe you started to see at the end of last season were some players kind of tuning out Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox. They've heard those guys for so many years. Just like sometimes you need a change of voice from the head coach, where people start to tune out the head coach. Maybe people were starting to tune out those guys also. I'm not taking anything away from them. It's just that you've heard it before. You knew Jason Kelce, the way he leads, he's very emotional. You knew the way Fletcher Cox leads. He's going to challenge you. So maybe players started to tune them out a little bit. So I think we overrate that. And I do think there are other guys who could step up as leaders on this team. You're still going to have Lane Johnson. Jalen Hurts, we know, needs to be a better leader. A.J. Brown. Now, I know Cilio on this show calls A.J. Brown A.J. Owens. I see a different A.J. Brown. I see a true leader on this team in A.J. Brown, who will not only hold himself accountable, but will hold his teammates accountable. And they need that. And if you tuned into my Fanatic show on Saturday, I had Joe Santoliquito on, who wrote the article about Jalen Hurts when the season ended, and he talked about A.J. Brown. He talked about how A.J. Brown is anything but a diva, how much of a leader he is. That between the two of them, A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, a lot of times Jalen Hurts defers to A.J. Brown. So this whole narrative that's being created about A.J. Brown is so overblown and ridiculous. And there's people in our chat who take it and run with it, calling this guy a diva. There's no basis for it. So you still have Lane Johnson. Jalen Hurts needs to be a better leader. You have A.J. Brown. I expect guys like Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson and Devontae Smith to step up and now take control of that locker room, because when the older vets retire like Cox and Kelce, it opens up the door for you to step up and be a better leader. And you look at that defensive side of the football, the question is, well, who's going to lead? Who's going to take control of that defense? Because for so long, it's been Cox and BG. And maybe BG comes back, but there needs to be other players to step up and lead that defense. And who's it's going to be? Look, you still have Slay. I know some people don't like Slay and how he doesn't stop talking. I get it. But you still have Slay, who may be a leader, but you're going to need other guys to step up. You need the Milton Williams and maybe Jalen Carter. I know he's only going to be in his second season. Is Reddick back? So there's a lot of question marks about leaders on that defensive side of the football. So that's the one big question mark. I think there's enough leaders on offense. Who's going to lead that defense now? And I think we'll start to figure that out as that defense starts to take shape, because I'm expecting a lot of changes. We know there's a ton of free agents that aren't coming back to this Eagles defense. I think you'll start to figure that out depending on who they bring in free agency. And speaking of Jeremy Fowler and free agency, he had another report over the weekend that there could be a reunion in the works between the Philadelphia Eagles and Chauncey Gardner Johnson. CJGJ could be coming back to Philadelphia. Now, let's first talk about that safety position, because, yes, obviously, they need help at safety. They released Kevin Byard, which we all expected. If you follow this show, you know we've been talking about that for weeks, that they were going to release Kevin Byard because it saves you like $14 million against the cap. It was a no-brainer. You're not bringing back a safety with that big of a cap hit. Now, does this mean that Kevin Byard is done in Philly? I don't know. There's still the possibility he goes out there, doesn't get money that he wants, and maybe they bring him back. But even if you brought back Kevin Byard, which I would put maybe less than 50% right now, the only other safeties you currently have on your roster are Reed Blankenship and Sidney Brown. Sidney Brown tore his ACL the last game of the season. We don't know when he's going to be back. So now, right now, as we sit here today, the only safety that you have that's healthy going into 2024 on the roster is Reed Blankenship. So clearly the Eagles need help. So the report was, don't rule out a reunion between the Philadelphia Eagles and Chauncey Gardner Johnson. And we all remember CJ GJ when he was here in 2022. Played really well. Then he lacerated his kidney or his liver and missed some games, led the league in interceptions before he did that. Now, I'm not going to be upset if they bring in CJ GJ. I think that would be a good move. I think it would be a good move to bring him back. We need safety help, but that can't be the only move for me. Howie Roseman can't only sign Chauncey Gardner Johnson and think that that's going to cure all the problems at the safety position, because Sidney Brown tore his ACL. We don't know when he's going to be back. Reed Blankenship, before we even get into whether or not we trust him on the field as a safety, he hasn't been able to stay healthy in his 2 seasons. Chauncey Gardner Johnson got hurt when he was here in 2022, tore his pec last year in Detroit, played 2 games. So you can't go into this season with Chauncey Gardner Johnson, who's injury prone, Reed Blankenship, who's injury prone, Sidney Brown, who's coming back from an ACL. So I'd be okay if they brought back Chauncey Gardner Johnson, but that can't be the big move at safety. You got to do something else. You have to absolutely go after one of these big name safeties. And I don't care which one of them you get. I mean, for me, the dream would be Antoine Winfield Jr. I mean, that's who I want. If Tampa Bay is dumb enough to let him out the door, Howie Roseman, as soon as the legal tampering period kicks off, should give him whatever he wants to get Antoine Winfield Jr. in midnight green next year. That, for me, is at the top of the list. If Tampa is dumb enough. Now, just got reported Tampa Bay re-signed future Hall of Famer Mike Evans to a 2-year deal. Threw a lot of money at him. I'm kind of surprised he stayed there. I thought he would have tried to join some sort of contender. I don't think the Bucs are a contender, not with their quarterback situation. And I know people are going to come after me in the chat. Baker Mayfield beat Jalen Hurts. Baker Mayfield still stinks, okay? He's not going to win a Super Bowl. So, and I know Evans already got his ring. I see flexing and stepping. He already got one when Brady was the quarterback. But I thought he would have maybe gone to a contender. But Mike Evans stays in Tampa. So if they're willing to give Evans money to get him to stay, I'd be shocked if Tampa doesn't do whatever they have to do to keep Antoine Winfield Jr. But that's who I want, Antoine Winfield. But even if Tampa keeps Antoine Winfield Jr., there are other safeties available that I think they should go after. Kyle Duggar from the New England Patriots. You have Cameron Curl from the Washington Commanders. We've seen him firsthand how good he could be. Another NFC East safety, Xavier McKinney from the Giants. Even Geno Stone from Baltimore. But for me, you can't just make Chauncey Gardner Johnson your big free agent safety acquisition. I'd love Antoine Winfield Jr., man. Absolutely love it. Now, there were some other reports. People are trying to connect the dots that maybe the Eagles would make a trade for Justin Simmons from the Denver Broncos, who had one of his best seasons under Vic Fangio. Now, the reason I don't like that is Justin Simmons is 30 years old. So I don't want the old safety again. We just ran into this with Kevin Byard. I want a guy that you're going to be able to sign for the next 4 years as they're still in the prime of their career. And that would be an Antoine Winfield Jr. Now, Kyle Duggar from New England, his price tag may have just gone up because over the weekend, it was reported that the New England Patriots have made him an offer to stay in New England. Because the Patriots are smart. They don't want to let a safety like that out the door. But the Philadelphia Eagles absolutely have to do more than just Chauncey Gardner Johnson. I actually don't mind the move. I see some people, and I posted a video on my Instagram today talking about how they don't want Chauncey Gardner Johnson. He's a cancer in that locker room. So I actually wouldn't mind Chauncey Gardner Johnson. I kind of like that, swagger he played with on the field. But you can't rely on him, Reed Blankenship, and Sidney Brown as your safeties going into next season. We need more than that. And, man, if Tampa lets if they let Antoine Winfield Jr. go, and Howie Roseman's able to make that move happen, I don't care what else they do, I'm ecstatic this offseason. But there also is a cautionary tale here. And if you tuned into my shows on Saturday and Sunday on 97.5 The Fanatic, I was talking about some of the biggest free agent misses, but I was also talking about sometimes it's the move that not everyone is calling for. And as we're talking about safeties and free agent safeties, who remembers back, and I'm trying to remember the exact year now. Let me see if I still have my notes here. But who remembers back the year that was probably 2012 maybe? The year they got Malcolm Jenkins. Everybody that year, and we talked about this a little on Friday, but everybody that year wanted Jarius Byrd or TJ Ward. Everybody. Oh, they got to get TJ Ward. They got to get Jarius Byrd. Well, the Philadelphia Eagles go in a different direction, and they sign Malcolm Jenkins. And there was all types of articles written in the city of Philadelphia. I read one over the weekend from Jeff McClain from back then talking about how the Eagles, they didn't go after the big name. They went with Malcolm Jenkins, who's a below-average safety. Jarius Byrd never made a Pro Bowl for New Orleans after they let Malcolm go and sign Jarius Byrd. TJ Ward, I think, made 1 or 2 Pro Bowls. Both of those guys were out of the league by 2018. Malcolm Jenkins comes in here and helps them win a Super Bowl. Never leaves the damn field. Played not only defense, played special teams. Turned out to be one of the best leaders that we've ever had in a Philadelphia Eagles uniform. So as much as I'm sitting up here saying, hey, sign this guy, sign that guy, sometimes it's the name that a lot of people aren't as excited about that could turn out being the big hit. No better example for me than Malcolm Jenkins. But unlike Jarius Byrd and TJ Ward, I look at Antoine Winfield Jr., and I think he is a can't-miss signing. He's that damn good. And he doesn't only cover. I mean, he can defend the run. He can blitz. He's one of the best blitzing safeties in the NFL. I would just absolutely love it if the Philadelphia Eagles could somehow get Antoine Winfield Jr. But we're going to take a quick break. Hit that like button for me. Hit that share button for me. When we get back, I want to change gears a little bit. Talk a little Phillies, a little Sixers, a little Flyers, because big news in all three. This is the Philly Sports Power Hour. I'm Bill Colarulo. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
EAGLES. Eagles.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the Philly Sports Power Hour. I'm Bill Colarulo, as always. Appreciate everybody spending this hour with me. And if this is your first time at the Power Hour, welcome. We are live every Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And make sure you're following me on all social media platforms because we do post daily content everywhere. And if you're just checking in, we talked about Jason Kelce. His 1 p.m. press conference probably means he's retiring. We talked about what that's going to mean for this team. Talked about Fletcher Cox, the reports over the weekend that he's probably going to retire this offseason. I got into a little bit about Chauncey Gardner Johnson and how I feel about the safety position. So when the show's over, if you missed it, you can go back. It'll be on YouTube, which is the nice part about this digital platform is you can listen back to all the shows. But during the break, we're still live on TikTok. And during the break, people on TikTok were talking about Patrick Surtain at corner. Now, obviously, Patrick Surtain is an absolute stud, one of the best corners in the league, and he's still very, very young, but he's still under contract with the Denver Broncos. So in order to get him, you'd have to make a trade for him. And I don't know what you'd have to give up. We know there were reports at the trade deadline this past season that the Eagles tried to get Surtain. They tried to make a trade for him, and Denver ended up not moving him. But I was saying it to the TikTok crew on the break, and I've said it before on this show. I put corner at number 4. Now, if the Philadelphia Eagles went and made a trade for Patrick Surtain, I'm not going to be angry about that. He's one of the best young corners in the league. Definitely would help the defense. But you can't do anything, in my opinion, at corner if it prevents you from bringing in a linebacker, a safety, and an edge rusher. Because for me, they are more priorities than any other position on that defense. Just look at the current roster. You look at the cornerbacks. You still have Slay. We have Isaiah Rodgers, who I dove more into Isaiah Rodgers this weekend. When Isaiah Rodgers was on the Indianapolis Colts, first of all, he's still only 26 years old. And when he was on the Indianapolis Colts, you look at his pro football focus grades for his first 3 seasons in the league. He was an 85.6 in 2020, a 71 in 2021, and in 2022, the last season that we've seen him play before he was suspended, he was an 82.1 pro football focus grade. So to put that into perspective for you, in 2022, corners who played more than 400 snaps, Isaiah Rodgers was the 5th highest graded in the entire NFL. The only 4 corners with higher grades than Isaiah Rodgers in 2022, Sauce Gardner, Patrick Surtain, Jalen Ramsey, and Duke Shelley. That's it. And then Isaiah Rodgers. So I look at Isaiah Rodgers joining this team this season, and he's like a free agent signing for the Philadelphia Eagles because he wasn't here last year. So when you look at that cornerback room and you still have Slay and you have Isaiah Rodgers and you have Keely Ringo, who you know I love, and I see I'm awake in the chat saying Bill loves Ringo. You're damn right I do. A 4th-round rookie, 21 years old, who we knew was going to be raw when he got here, showed me a lot of promise in year 1. You still have Zach McPherson coming back. Do they bring back Avonte Maddox, another guy who can't stay healthy? But when you look at the cornerback room and you compare it to the safety room and the linebacker room, you can't deny that linebacker and safety are in a lot worse spot than the cornerback room is. I just spit off 5 names. We didn't even talk about Eli Ricks. You know I'm not going to talk about James Bradbury. But you look at the linebackers, who do you have? Nakobe Dean and Ben Van Sumeren? You look at the safeties, who do you have? We just talked about it. Reed Blankenship and Sidney Brown, who we don't know when he's going to be back. So for me, if they upgrade corner, I'm not complaining. Corner's an important position, but you can't do that if it means sacrificing a stud linebacker and safety with the state of this team right now. So we will see. And I kind of agree. I see you in the chat talking about Avonte Maddox. I'm not bringing Maddox back under his current deal. I'm not bringing back Maddox. So you look at Maddox's current deal, his cap hit in 2023 was $4 million. His cap hit in 2024, which would be the final year of his deal, more than doubles. It's $9.7 million. It goes up to almost $10 million. You can't have a player on your team that carries a $10 million cap hit who's literally played 13 games in 2 years. So as good as Avonte Maddox had been when he was healthy a couple years ago, he can't stay healthy. The guy hasn't shown that he can stay healthy. So I'm not giving up $10 million in cap space to Avonte Maddox. And if they were to cut him with a post-June 1st designation, they save over $7 million on the cap. So I'd be completely fine with moving on from Avonte Maddox. Now, if he wants to renegotiate his deal and you could get him really, really cheap, then I'd be okay bringing back Maddox, but not at that cap number, not on that current deal. No way. But let's jump over. We're doing a lot of time talking about the Philadelphia Eagles today. Obviously, Kelce, Cox, Chauncey Gardner Johnson. But some big news from Clearwater today from our Philadelphia Phillies. They have agreed to a 3-year, $126 million contract extension with our ace, Zach Wheeler. This was big. We knew the Phillies wanted to get this done. There was no way they wanted Zach Wheeler to hit free agency after this season, especially knowing that he's from Atlanta or he's got a house in Atlanta. Could you imagine if the Atlanta Braves swooped in and signed Zach Wheeler? But anyway, big news. They get Zach Wheeler done. Now you look at that starting rotation. You got Zach Wheeler as your ace. You have Aaron Nola, who should be your 1A. Ranger Suarez, Tawan Walker, and Christopher Sanchez. Not bad. But there were some reports this weekend that maybe the Phillies were in the mix for Blake Snell. We also know that Jordan Montgomery is still available. So should the Philadelphia Phillies go out there and maybe bring in another potential stud starter? I know there's some people who think Blake Snell's up and down, and he was kind of a product of the ballpark he pitched in. But I look at it, Zach Wheeler, Nola, and Suarez are going to be good. We know what they can do. Well, I shouldn't say we know they're going to be good because Aaron Nola kind of has those up and down years, but let's hope we get an up year from Nola. And we know what Suarez does in the postseason. Guy's got ice in his veins. So when you look at Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery, if you're able to get them on a decent one-year deal, really the only question you got to ask yourself is, do you think they're better than Tawan Walker or Christopher Sanchez? Because if you're able to get one of those guys at an inexpensive deal and you don't have to give up anything, well, now your starting five maybe becomes Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, Blake Snell, and Tawan Walker. Sounds pretty good. Now, interestingly, I say you don't have to give up anything. The way the luxury tax works and all that, and I'm not as familiar with the Major League Baseball rules as I am with the NFL, but if they were to sign a Blake Snell, it's more than just signing him. They would lose some of their international pool money. I think they would drop 10 spots in the upcoming draft. So there's more than just the money if you were to sign a Blake Snell. But maybe that's something that they would make the sacrifice, because we know this Phillies team, they're all in. They are absolutely all in. And I see Jim G on YouTube. He says, I just read on Twitter that Montgomery wants Nola money. Well, Montgomery may want Nola money, and that's fine. But as we sit here right now, March 4th, he's probably not getting them. He's probably not getting that money, or he would have already been signed. So the longer this offseason goes and the longer into spring training we get, Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery are going to have to probably take a one-year deal somewhere to prove themselves this season to maybe get the money they want next offseason. So that's the only reason why I'm talking about Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery, is because the longer spring training goes without them signing a deal somewhere, the more likely it is you could swoop in and get them on a affordable one-year deal. But even if we were just talking about the Eagles and how I need to see them make some splashes at linebacker and safety, even if the Phillies don't do anything right now, I'm okay. I'm okay with the roster the way it is. I'm okay with the pitching staff, both the starters and the bullpen, the way they are. Let's go into the season. Let's see what the needs are of this baseball team. And if the trade deadline comes around and we think we need another arm, whether as a starter or in the bullpen, or you think you need another piece to add to this lineup, make the move then. So I'd be okay. Look, I'm not going to complain if they bring in a Blake Snell or a Jordan Montgomery. But at the same time, if they don't make one of those moves, I'm very happy with where the Phillies are right now. I'm excited to see what some of these young guys can do. Especially as you're talking about missing a closer. I see Timothy Walker saying they're missing a closer. But I'm excited about Orion Kirkring this year. Still really young. You look at, how old is Orion now? 22 years old. Orion Kirkring, 22 years old. And you saw what he could do last year. I know he had that one bad outing in the NLCS, but you saw what he can do. And there's other guys on this team that can fill that closer role. We still have Alvarado. You still have Dominguez and Jeff Hoffman and Greg Soto and Matt Strom. I'm okay with the bullpen. That's why I said, let's see what we have. Let these guys grow a little bit. And if the trade deadline comes and we think we're missing a true closer, or we think we need another arm in the bullpen or another starter or maybe another piece in this lineup, make the move then. So I'm kind of good where we are right now. And I'm letting myself get carried away a little bit. I know it's only spring training, but everything you're hearing and reading and seeing when they broadcast the games, I'm fired up for the Phils, man. Bryce Harper looks like a Gold Glove winner at first base. You got Rojas hitting triples. Even Christian Pache, 3 for 7 with 2 dingers already in spring training. So there's a lot to like about this Phillies team. So big news from the Phils. They extend Zach Wheeler. That was good. We need to get that done. But let's talk about our other sports teams. Because this is maybe the best I've felt about the Sixers in a really long time. I know it was only 2 games. But the last time we spoke, the Sixers were coming off a really bad performance against the Boston Celtics. I was done with Tobias Harris. I had enough of Tobias Harris failing to step up and contribute to this team. And he's bounced back. 2 games in a row, Tobias Harris saying, hey, maybe I'm not done. Maybe I can step up and help this team win some basketball games with Joel Embiid's absence. So the Sixers win on Friday night, 121-114 against the Charlotte Hornets. And then a big road win yesterday in a Sunday matinee against the Dallas Mavericks, 120-116. Harris puts up 31 points and 12 rebounds against the Hornets. And then he drops 28 points and 10 rebounds against the Dallas Mavericks. Now, is it a coincidence that in both of those games, Nick Nurse changes up the starting lineup and inserts Kyle Lowry at point guard? 37-year-old Philadelphia bred Kyle Lowry. What does he have left? But in those 2 games, man, Kyle Lowry, I don't know how much you can lean on a 37-year-old player playing 30 minutes a game, but is there a coincidence that you insert Kyle Lowry into the lineup, and not only does Tobias Harris have 2 good games, look at the stats, the overall stats for the team. Friday night against the Hornets, 38 assists and only 7 turnovers. Sunday against the Mavericks, 26 assists and only 8 turnovers. So Nick Nurse talked about it after the Charlotte Hornets game, and you saw more of it against the Dallas Mavs, is a lot of swing, swing, shoot, swing, swing, drive. And I love the quote after the Hornets game saying, our players should not be dribbling the basketball unless they're attacking the rim. So Nick Nurse understanding now without Joel Embiid, you have to change up the way you play basketball. So you're seeing a lot of passes. Swing, swing, shoot. And Kyle Lowry kind of being the general now with a lot of basketball knowledge on the court. You saw what he's done to this offense the last 2 games. So I'm not getting carried away. This team still can't beat Boston. Boston won their 11th in a row yesterday against the Golden State Warriors by over 50 points, man. But look, maybe we got to take the small victories here. They're not going to beat Boston, but can they stay in the top 6? Because it's a tight race right now. They're a half game up on the 6th-seeded Magic. They're 1 game up on the 7th-seeded Heat. They're 2 games up on the 8th-seeded Pacers, who somehow lost to the San Antonio Spurs yesterday. So can the 76ers stay in that top 6? And then hopefully Joel Embiid comes back. We're supposed to get an update this week about Joel. We'll see. But can they stay in the top 6? But I'm taking small victories here. Kyle Lowry looks good. The offense is playing well. Tobias had 2 games in a row looking all right. Even Mo Bamba in the starting lineup the past 2 games. Kelly Oubre coming off the bench. So maybe they can stay in that top 6. It's not going to be easy, but if Tyrese Maxey can keep doing what he's doing, he dropped 33 on Friday night. He had another 24 yesterday. So we'll see. I'm not getting too carried away with the Sixers, but small victories. But let's jump over to our other team, because a team that I am getting carried away about, that has me so excited because they just keep exceeding all of our expectations, and that's our Philadelphia Flyers. Already more wins this season than they had all last year. They had a tough one on Friday night. They blew a 2-0 lead. They let the Washington Capitals score 5 unanswered in that game. And Tortorella wasn't happy with a couple rookies, put him on the bench. But they bounced back Saturday night on a back-to-back. They start Felix Sandstrom for the first time in net this season. And the Flyers delivered. They win 4-2. And we were talking about some young guys earlier, letting the young guys play for the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's talk about a young player on the Philadelphia Flyers. 22-year-old Tyson Forrester puts in 2 goals on Saturday against Ottawa. That's now 9 goals in his last 9 games for Tyson Forrester. And you look at the NHL ranks for the most goals by a rookie. Forrester's at number 2 right now. Well, technically, he's at number 3 because there's 2 guys above him tied. But Connor Bedard and Marco Rossi both have 17 goals. Tyson Forrester sitting there with 16 goals, only 1 goal behind the lead for the most goals by a rookie. Tyson Forrester, my man. So now's the time. I keep telling you. I've been telling you for months it's time to turn back to the Philadelphia Flyers. Because we're going to get playoff hockey, hopefully. It's not going to be easy. It's a tight race in the Metropolitan Division. But the fact that we're sitting here right now, it's March 4th, and we're talking about Philadelphia Flyers games, and they matter big, is huge. And we talked a little bit about Dollar Dog Night last week on the show. Everybody's upset there's no Dollar Dogs at Citizens Bank Park. Well, head on down to Wells Fargo Center tonight because the Philadelphia Flyers are in action against the St. Louis Blues. And guess what? It's Dollar Dog Night at the hockey game. So get in that building because it is a fun time to be a Flyers fan right now. Only 20 games to play. And they're currently sitting at that 3rd spot in the Metropolitan Division. The teams behind them have a couple games in hand. So these games matter. And they're exciting to watch. These guys play hard. I've told you before, Tortorella has them playing hard. They block a lot of shots. And somebody put it in the chat earlier. Tyson Forrester scoring his penalty shot on Saturday. They've now set a record for the most penalty shot goals in a season in NHL history. Just fun to watch. They have a great penalty kill. They suck on the power play. But that's gotten a little bit better. They've shown some promise there, but they're the number 1 penalty kill team in the NHL. So just a fun team to watch, a young team. And the trade deadline is coming up on Friday, March 8th. We know they're not going to be buyers, but let's hope they don't sell too much so that the team can still make a run. And I'm looking at some of the comments in the chat about the Flyers. Yeah, Flyers are fun to watch. So give them some love, man. Give the Fly guys some love. Some other news real quickly around the NFL. We talked about Mike Evans re-signing in Tampa. Let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys real quick because some good news from Dallas. I talked about this on The Fanatic this weekend if you were listening. But we know the Dallas Cowboys are currently sitting at a negative $10.6 million in cap space. Negative 10.6. And mainly because their starting quarterback, Dak Prescott, carries a $59.4 million cap hit. And everybody assumed, well, the easiest way for the Cowboys to get cap compliant is to enter into a new deal with Dak Prescott. Well, Dak Prescott's in the driver's seat. Because if he doesn't want to renegotiate, if he says, hey, give me X, I want this much money, and Dallas doesn't want to do it, why would Dak Prescott sign a new deal? He would say, fine, I'll play out this year on a $59.4 million cap hit, and next year I'm a free agent. I have a no tag clause. Dak Prescott can't be franchise tagged. So he's in the driver's seat, and things must not be going well in Dallas with those negotiations because Jerry Jones told his beat reporter, Nick Harris of the Cowboys.com, we don't need to extend Dak, but we can if everybody wants to solve it. He had one of the best years, as you all know, but the thing that I would point out is we all think that had a lot to do with the fact that Mike McCarthy is right there involved in Dak's play. End quote from Jerry Jones. So now they must be in a heated negotiation, because if he's going publicly to say, hey, Dak Prescott, we don't have to renegotiate this deal, and he only had his success because Mike McCarthy's right there, Dallas is a mess. Negative $11 million in cap space, a quarterback with a $59.4 million cap hit, and more news coming from Ian Rappaport. Tackle Tyron Smith, only 33 years old, 2-time first-team All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler, 3-time second-team All-Pro, starting left tackle for the last 13 years for the Dallas Cowboys, unlikely to be re-signed by Dallas because they don't have any money. So how about them Cowboys? So some good things if you're an Eagles fan to see what's going on in Dallas. So even though you think things are bad in Philadelphia, right now, March 4th, as we get ready for free agency, things are pretty good. We got a lot of money, over $40 million against the cap. We got a lot of draft capital. The offense is pretty much set. Now, today will be a sad day when we hear from Jason Kelce, but you know my position on that. It's time to get younger. But this was the Philly Sports Power Hour, and like we end every Philly Sports Power Hour with a little today in sports history. Well, first off, a happy birthday to Nick Castellanos of the Philadelphia Phillies. He turned 32 years old today. But we're going to go all the way back to 1968, March 4th, 1968. Smokin' Joe Frazier, Philadelphia bred, took his record to 20-0 and won the heavyweight title versus Buster Mathis with a TKO in the 11th round at Madison Square Garden. Smokin' Joe would then hold the title from 1968 all the way up until 1973, when he was beat by a boxer by the name of George Foreman. But today, March 4th, 1968, our own Smokin' Joe Frazier won the title for the first time, heavyweight champ. I appreciate everybody being here in the chat. I really appreciate everybody saying I need more hours. I'm glad I'm keeping you entertained, but I do really enjoy you spending this hour with me. So hit that like button, hit that share button. We'll be back here tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Oh, and before I forget, I see Linda Toba checking in. Absolutely happy birthday to Michael Tobin Jr., my future brother-in-law, my man. Already reached out to him, wished him a happy birthday. So happy birthday to him. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And make sure you're following, because we'll be posting daily content and probably my reaction to what we think's coming at 1 o'clock. Jason Kelce calling it a career. As always, go Birds.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.